comic cinematic universe with Chill and Grace. So, what is up? How's it going, Grace? What's popping with you?
I'm doing good. Happy Friday. Pretty like easy but like long week this week. So
Mm-hmm.
excited for it to kind of wrap up. Yes, but how are you doing today?
I am good, actually. I told you I was gonna do something on Friday. I'd rather not repeat just in case the feds are watching. You know what I'm saying?
Comes to the news, I know like in your piece you're like, okay. DC's in shambles, like they don't know what they're doing. And I feel like this is James Gunn knowing what he's doing and realizing like there's some projects that just don't fit with where the DC universe is headed. And I'm kind of excited about it. But what are your
Right.
thoughts?
I don't want to put it out as I wanted to almost borderline put out an announcement saying like DC's throwing in like the towel, waving the white flag, but I know that's not the case. Like I jokingly posted on Instagram talking about how James Gunn is secretly still working with Kevin Feige, and the whole plan was to sabotage the whole DC Warner Brothers Studio situation. But even if that weren't the case, I can see James Gunn honestly looking at the past works of this universe, and he saw what he liked, he saw what he disliked, and as far as the plans that was going forward, uh, scrapping certain projects was the right move. I think just because I think the projects that were slated, minus Wonder Woman, I didn't even know we were going to get another Wonder Woman, but like something like Aquaman, if anything, like I've already expressed my thoughts on the first and how I wasn't necessarily interested in the second just because of, I'm sorry to say, Jason Momoa, Mimosa, whatever his last name is. I'm sorry. It's just really a lot. So I can see James Gunn just be like, listen, you all, this was fun, but I'm here now, and these are the changes that are going to be made just because Warner Brothers hired me to put me in a position, or put this in a position to be actually in competition with Marvel Studios.
Yeah, and I kind of want to touch base on like everything you just said because I totally agree. And I think just starting off, I loved the post that you made. Obviously, it was like fully jokingly, but I thought it was so hilarious. Like James Gunn is actually just like an espionage, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Yep.
But really, I think like having an outsider's perspective, looking at the DC universe, I think that that's actually a really good thing to have because things have been so inconsistent. And when you look at James Gunn's influence in certain projects, it makes so much sense that they would hire him to then lead the future of the DC universe because projects like Suicide Squad, the reboot, and Peacemaker were some of the most amazing things that DC has produced. And it's so funny because it's with characters that are very like underground. You mean like they don't have a lot of a fan base before these projects, you know? So I think that these scrappings of certain projects, honestly, it's just kind of cleansing what they don't need. And I'm just going to read a quote really quickly from James Gunn, kind of addressing these rumors.
Mm-hmm.
He says, the validity varies. Some is true, some is half true, and some is not true at all. And so I think it'd be kind of fun to see like what do you think falls under each category? Like let's start with just like what do you think is true of the rumors? Like which do you think is like almost certain? How do you feel?
Rumors in terms of projects being
In
scrapped.
terms of the projects that are rumored to be like axed, right? Because it's Wonder Woman, Jason Momoa, um, let's see, Superman. Those are
Mm-hmm.
like the names that are being mentioned. Like, which do you think is the one that's true, right?
Well, of the Justice League, just characters, just in general, being that Ben Affleck has already said that he's done playing Batman. I think those are quote unquote the big three right now for DC. Aquaman, Wonder Woman, and Superman, right? Um, we just got the news. Honestly, I think it may be have been like a month or two ago around Black Adam. Yeah, when Black Adam came out, they came out to say Henry Cavill's coming back as Superman, and then boom, word drops yesterday saying Superman project scrapped. Now, as far as that rumor is being concerned, I can't say if it were true or not. I would more than likely lean on the false, just because I think Superman of all characters and Man of Steel of all movies, when it comes down to the DC universe, is it's up there. I would put Man of Steel top five, maybe even top three when it comes to the DC universe. It was a good movie, and every instance of getting Henry Cavill as Superman. After that, we got Batman v Superman, good. Joss Whedon Justice League, not good. And then the makeup for the Zack Snyder Justice League, which is even better. And then we get this cameo in Black Adam. So I feel like as far as a Superman movie, that may be a false rumor. Like, what do you think about that?
I agree because they just greenlit like the film, right?
Right.
Like that they're making another Superman film. And also being that like they just reintroduced him in Black Adam, I just feel like it's really unlikely that that's the one that's going to be scrapped. Keep in mind, DC does no problem scrapping projects that were even like completed. We saw that with Batgirl.
Mm-hmm.
But like this is Henry Cavill. It's a little bit different. And also like Henry Cavill like hopped off Netflix's The Witcher for reportedly to just focus on not Man of Steel, but
Mm-hmm.
Superman. So I feel like that one might be the one that's being categorized as like not true at all. Like I think of those three, that's how I
Mm-hmm.
feel. I feel like Wonder Woman is the one that's like, okay, that part is true. Just because the last one wasn't very successful at all. And they announced that they were going to make a third one very shortly after the release of the second, but it wasn't very great. Like, I think it really dropped. Wonder Woman, the original one, was amazing. And I think it's one of the better films
Mm-hmm.
that DC was able to kind of produce, especially in that time
Definitely.
period. Um, but honestly, like the second one wasn't great, and you really don't hear a lot of noise of people wanting to see the third one. And I think right now in this period where James Gunn, like, okay, I'm just gonna read this really quickly. I drop things right now. It's totally okay. The rumors are that DC Studios, so James Gunn and Peter Safran, they're looking to start fresh, and I think that Wonder Woman would be a place to kind of scrap because realistically, like Jason Momoa as Aquaman was received really well. And if anything, maybe that's the half truth one. Like maybe he's not going to get another film after the second, but maybe he might have like smaller roles, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
I think in terms of Wonder Woman, I think it's unfortunate for Gal Gadot. That's how you pronounce her name, right?
I think so.
It's
I
it's
wouldn't be able to pronounce it any
it's
better.
it's it's unfortunate just because, say, she was, I would say, a star on the rise, right? Like she got her quick little intro playing the family role in Dominic Toretto's Fast and Furious, you know what I'm saying? And then from there she got Wonder Woman. And then like when she got Wonder Woman at first, I was like, yo, this is the chick from Fast and Furious. I don't really know. And then first Wonder Woman killed, you know what I'm saying? It was good. I was like, okay, all right. We have a solid Wonder Woman. Then trailer comes out for Wonder Woman 2. I think uh we get images of her in the golden suit. I think we get images of Kristen Wiig being mysterious. Maybe even a Kristen Wiig in her cat suit uniform. Not uniform, but her transformation. We may have got that. and then we got a few images of, I forgot the actor's name, but the Hispanic actor that I actually like. He's a good actor, but he played the guy spreading the word and making all the wishes come true. Do you know his name by chance?
Yeah, he's the Mandalorian. I'm gonna look it up because like I think I don't want to say it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't confidently feel like I know who that is. You know what I mean? But he was also in Game of Thrones. He got his eyes like
Oh right,
installed.
he was it Martell? Part of
Yes, he was
he's
Martell.
part of
Yes,
the
yes.
Sand Snakes or whatnot.
Pedro Pascal.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I had it right in my head. I just wasn't
I
confident
wanted
to
to
say it
say
out loud.
Pascal, but I've heard Pascal as a first name, so I didn't know if that was like his first or last name.
Right.
But with those images of that trailer, I was expecting, or everybody was expecting more, but it turned out to be a dud, right? So if they were planning on coming out with a third, especially with James Gunn at the helm, I feel like it would have been something to get excited for. And if they're scrapping it, it's a surprise just because he is who he is. And being that he's proven himself to Warner Brothers with Suicide Squad and Peacemaker, I think he could have revived uh revived Wonder Woman just to kind of give Gal like a redemption piece, you know what I'm saying? But if they're scrapping it, that's like I said, it's unfortunate.
I mean, it is just being that like Wonder Woman is such a staple when it comes to DC. Like when you think DC, like there's three I think main ones that kind of come up. It's
Mhm.
like Batman, Superman, and Wonder
Mhm.
Woman, and obviously like Aquaman, Flash, like all of those do come up, and I feel like those are like the big three or the ones you immediately think of. And so it is sad to kind of think that all three like that the all three are kind of out.
Mhm.
Like Batman's out, Wonder Woman's I think out. Henry Cavill, I do really feel like of those three projects that are reportedly scrapped, I feel like that's the one that's like not true at
Mhm.
all. But it's actually really sad because Gal Gadot, she posted I think something that was very suggestive or like alluding, to like Wonder Woman 3 because it's been in like the early productions. Um, there's been a script, like I think it was like they were going to start filming like kind of soonish. Um, and then you get the news that that's one of the projects that's reportedly scrapped. So it kind of looks bad. You know what I mean? Um, but like I said, it doesn't seem off for DC. Like it's scrapped, the Batgirl project and things like that, and the film was already done. Like that's honestly like wild to me,
Mhm.
But go
I
ahead.
was just gonna say, just with that, Batgirl along with the Flash, right? It's like with these movies, it's like we knew they were coming. We knew Batgirl was scrapped, but as of right now, we have no idea what's going on with the Flash. And I think it's been since like DC. We can say DC fandom 2020, right? That's when we were thinking they were gonna get it together, right? Or was that last year? Was it 2021 when they had all the announcement?
2021. So it was a DC Fandom 2021 in December. They gave us the lineup, and it was really exciting because at the time, a lot of projects for Marvel weren't announced.
Mm-hmm.
So it really looked like DC almost had more projects coming out, which has just never
Mm-hmm.
happened before. And I mean, they started off strong and they got really good momentum with Peacemaker, Suicide Squad, and even the Batman
Mm-hmm.
film. And then everything was pushed back, and then we had Comic-Con where they re-announced the projects, but it's kind of like, well, this isn't an announcement. Like you've
Right.
already given this. And so now that I think James Gunn is the head, like this, I feel like it's like turning the tides for DC because he's proven to give us what we want when it comes to these projects, and they've been balanced. And so I mean, I'm excited, like despite like these uncertainties that are coming out. I think it just comes with having someone in charge. It's like think of like a job. Like when you get a new person in place,
Mm-hmm.
like they're like, you're gone, you stay, you're gone, and the things like that. I feel like that's what it kind of falls into. um and I think that the direction that they're trying to go for is still, it makes sense to me, and I think that's right. I really lean on the side that maybe Henry Cavill will be the thing that's continuing, and that's hasn't been interrupted, because they literally just introduced him in like Black Adam
Mm-hmm.
not too long ago, just a couple months ago. um so yeah, it's just wild to me.
Let's say with that being said, even though that he got his quick cameo along with Amanda Waller in Black Adam, it 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 was cool, but like I think something just came out this week in terms of it really not being enough and Black Adam turning out to be almost a dud. Like they didn't even make back what they spent on making the movie, you know? And with James Gunn, because this movie was completed before the James Gunn news, it I think this or that movie was more so the last movie of whoever Warner Brothers was in charge, like whoever who it was the last movie of their era. And like it was cool, like with the star power of The Rock and being who he was. And like I mentioned, I thought that movie, I thought it could have been a little darker, a little bit better. I think it was a step in the right direction, especially under the light of James Gunn. I think when it comes to Warner Brothers, they're going to have to, especially in establishing themselves and being different from Marvel. I think they have to go the grown up route with the success of Suicide Squad and Batman and The Peacemaker. I think Warner Brothers is just gonna have to go dark. They're gonna have to go adult. They're gonna have to go into a place to where it's rated M for mature. If you kind of get what I'm saying.
No, I totally get that. And I think also it's like with the Zack Schneider cut of Justice League, I think that also is a film that you can kind of put in that arena. And it's like, if you look at the things that land and hit almost like 100%, it is the films that lean in that direction. And I think it's kind of funny, because I feel like when you look at the history of the comics, like, yeah, I might be getting like the years wrong, but I think it was like in the 50s or 60s. It's around the time that like studies were coming out that like comic books were related to like, delinquency in kids and things like that. That comic books kind of had to stay within a line to stay within like the approval of this one organization that I can't think of. It's like a comic book authority
Right.
figure. And it's kind of once that lifted a little bit. Like you'll still see that on comic books, but it doesn't really mean anything at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And that they were able to kind of explore these characters with now these older fans, right? Because obviously they're now in like their 20s versus 10,
Mm-hmm.
right? You can create these more sophisticated stories that play with darker elements. And I think like Batman and the Joker are just such a great example. Like they really play with like the psychology of the Joker, which is kind of scary. Like Joker, what is it? The can't think of the name, but um I feel like the movies are almost leaning towards that, because I think on the opposite end, things like Wonder Woman, um, that like the second film was very there's a specific word I'm trying to think of, campy. It was very campy. And I think that's a big piece as to why it just didn't land. Like it was super cheesy. And I just think that the scenes that they thought they were hitting us with something like amazing weren't. And they were almost cringy, especially towards the end. And so I definitely agree with that. And I just think it's really interesting how that kind of aligns with even like the history of the comics. It's kind of interesting.
You saying that, especially about Wonder Woman. Um, Wonder Woman 1984, especially with the look and feel, and even before watching the movie, the look and feel of the trailer, it gave me uh, DC's take on how Guardians went retro and succeeded with the colorways, with the music, and it was just something to where it just didn't work. And I think as of right now, as far as brightness and color, I think DC needs to stay away because now, like while you were just talking, I was just kind of thinking back into just some older projects to where the Watchmen show and movie, those are a few of my favorite DC projects, and those were obviously more darker. Like the show was, yes, it was a little bit more mature, but just in terms of the content and the story wise, even in the movies, it wasn't like a everybody surviving. Like in the movie, everybody almost dies. You know what I'm saying? So it that is that side of the coin. Like we already have the brighter side of the coin to where I think we touched on it last week. With the Guardians trailer, to where Guardians could go dark because we're losing people, but DC has had the most success with movies that are losing people straight from the jump. You know what I'm saying?
And even like honestly, like just kind of like to talk more about that, I feel like even like the darkness, it's like beyond that. I think it's more so making it more just adult period.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because like if you look at projects, for example, like the Suicide Squad, those are a little bit closer to like the Guardians of the Galaxy feel, and that they're more playful.
Mm-hmm.
I think it still sticks true to the DC world, and that it's not as bright and like in the same tone as Guardians of the Galaxy, but it's still more playful than say Batman. But I think like the reason that they work is they're leaned more towards the older audiences, which I think is just where DC should be headed, because the stories that you can pull do fall into the more like adult, mature, and darker category, you know. But I think it does explore more beyond just like the darkness of it.
Wait,
Like
real quick question. Can you say that same statement as far as the Suicide Squad if the second one didn't come out?
what do you mean?
In terms of let's just talk about the first one, like in terms of the type of feel of what Suicide Squad is in comparison to the Guardians of the Galaxy, because I think it's easier to compare the second one just because coincidentally they were both directed by James Gunn, and he made a a movie about a team put together that worked, but I don't think you can say the same thing about the first Suicide Squad.
And maybe that's why it kind of flopped. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like I think there's just something about Suicide Squad that fits so well with the characters you're dealing with, because they are like not even B-list, they're like C-list characters. You know what I mean? Like the like if they're gonna be seated at an event, they'd be the ones next to like the bathrooms. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they have that Guardians of the Galaxy esque, like that element. Obviously, like a lot of that comes from the fact that it's James Gunn. You know, there's like like an imprint, you know, with directors. And but it still stays true to, I think, the characters that they're telling the stories about, and overall just like DC, because it's not 100% Guardians of the
Right.
Galaxy. It's the perfect dash that I think is still true to the stories that it's telling. And I think Suicide Squad was just so confused. Like I think the mission, like with the directors, the writers, and everything was just so not cohesive, and it definitely read that way. Obviously there was huge elements that I think were great. I feel like the best thing about Suicide Squad 1 is when it's just introducing the characters, like like that file scene. I feel like that was so cool. And obviously we got some great gems out of it, like Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. Like she is now who you think of as Harley Quinn. And I think, like me as a Harley Quinn fanatic, I love it. And it's great that they've been able to say create more projects with that character. But even say looking at Birds of Prey, which there's like inconsistencies when it comes to how you feel about the film. I feel like you either really love it or it just didn't hit for
Mm-hmm.
you. And I think you and I are the great examples of that spectrum. But I think it also falls under that mature category, you know? And so I definitely think that maybe that's an element that Suicide Squad, the reboot, had over the first one. It just had a great balance that I think stays true to the characters, and the maturity of it I think is a big part of it. And it's I think hopefully the direction that we're going to be leaning on, since we have James Gunn heading this. Like I feel like we have so much rapport with him as a director, that I think having him as the head of the studio is really reassuring
Mm-hmm.
for DC as a whole.
I'm thinking just like as of right now and what could go forward. Um, because the news of these three projects being scrapped, quote unquote, rumored to be scrapped. I'm wondering where can DC go? Is it if it's just like a clean restart? I guess that makes sense. But I think if James Gunn wants to connect it all with, let's say, pre James Gunn era, I think if anything, the Flash is gonna have anything and everything to do with that, just to either give us another Superman movie, give us new characters, give us not only new characters but new actors and actresses. If he's looking to reboot that whole universe, I think something has to happen in the story of Flashpoint Paradox to where we get another Wonder Woman, to where then he can create a new story for that. And then same deal with Batman, even if we don't go the Bruce Wayne route, being that we've gotten so many Bruce Waynes. Even though this Bruce Wayne that just came out this year is great, but even if you wanted to change it up and then give us like Terry McGinnis from Batman Beyond, it's just so many ways that he can reboot it. I'm just curious just to see where he takes it.
And I mean, it seems like the general, like, reportedly, it's that they want to start fresh. And I think a big part of it is that the DCEU that has existed is probably no longer going to be the
Mm-hmm.
case. And I feel like if anything, they're going to pull the things that have worked or the characters that have worked, especially when it comes to like casting and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that, and use that in whatever new foundation they're building. And whether honestly, like, I like the idea of maybe using Flashpoint as an anchor for that, just because I think it gives them that flexibility. But honestly, even just starting from scratch, like that's what they did with Suicide Squad. Like some people called it a sequel. Now people are all kind of cohesively calling it a reboot, and it kind of landed with audiences. It's kind of like if you just explain what you want us to, flow, like that's all I need. You know what I mean? And I think that things like maybe like a continuation, because I understand what you're saying. It's like if they're scrapping certain like major characters, like where are we gonna go, what characters are we gonna follow? And I think part of it is pulling and plucking things that have landed, like even characters from Black Adam that I think were really great.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like what's his name, I think it's Noah something Centineo. I don't know. You guys will know. It's Adam Smasher. I feel like that was a really cool character, and I feel like people really enjoyed him. Like pulling things that have landed and have worked, and then just encompassing it in the vision that they're trying to create. And even with something like Batman, because I kind of liked what you said that Batman's been done so many times. Um, and maybe just leave Batman in the Batman and let that continue as a separate
Mm-hmm.
project. And maybe as they continue like the new DC universe, or DC Studios, maybe playing with characters they just haven't played with before, like Nightwing. Like Nightwing is such a cool
Mm-hmm.
character, and they haven't utilized them or any of the Robins in recent films. And I think that there's so much behind that like there are a lot of areas to pull really good stories from that they just haven't utilized. And even in characters that are like basically unknown, and I think with the success of something like Suicide Squad, that definitely highlights characters that are just not known to many people, like Polka Dot Man and Calendar Man and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. I think, like, I feel hopeful. Like, I'm not so worried about them being able to give us stories, even with the scrapping of major characters like Wonder Woman. Like, I kind of do feel comfortable. Like I feel safe. I think in where DC is headed, just because of the hands that are kind of maneuvering these things.
I don't think it's well for me. I don't think it's a matter of feeling safe. I think you hit it right on the nose in terms of there being much more stories out there, and when it comes down to DC versus Marvel, Marvel has done an effective job of continuing on with stories and even like retiring certain characters, and pulling in brand new characters that we've never heard of and continuing on from there to where DC, it's been a little bit repetitive, like I mentioned with Batman, just a little bit, and then them not necessarily finding the right sequence or secret for the other characters. But maybe it's not about finding the right formula for those characters. Maybe it is. Maybe it's just like, okay, we tried it. Let's just expand upon it, introduce a new character, and then move on from there. I think that's one thing that I can agree with Suicide Squad. That's what they did. They gave us new characters. Like, even though I kind of like the characters of the first one, like Will Smith was Will Smith back then, and I actually liked his Deadshot character, and I was actually bummed that we didn't get that. But even in the second one, even though he wasn't there, DC gave us new characters, and they turned out to be good. They gave us Peacemaker. They gave us I forgot Idris Elba's character, but they gave us him. And they gave us like a few other characters. They retired Rick Flag, and then from there, if Amanda Waller wants to make another Suicide Squad, she can bring in new characters. So at the end of the day, I think you hit it right on the nose in terms of DC. Instead of just continually like rebooting, they just need to expand, and I think that's how Marvel has been able to expand their universe thus far.
And I think I completely agree. I feel like that's kind of I feel like we're very much in a similar mindset when it comes to these things, which never happened. But just to give you just a little bit of security when it comes to characters like Will Smith's Deadshot, the reason that he wasn't on film was for like schedule conflicts. Mm-hmm. And then they brought in Idris Elba, and they considered doing a recasting, but instead what they did is had him come in with a very similar character. He came in as I have it just so I didn't forget, Bloodsport. Mm-hmm. And which kept room for Will Smith to then reprise the role as Deadshot. And so that's definitely, I don't think, scrapped. And I feel like I'm just seeing like James Gunn, same thing. Like, I'm thinking of what characters worked, what characters people liked, plucking that and then figuring out how they fit in this new vision. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like Will Smith will come back. But I'm honestly excited. I'm excited that they're not afraid to scrap projects that probably won't work, or the recipe just isn't there right now. And focus on something on quality versus feeling like they need to invest time on something just because of the name,
I think just one of those characters is, honestly, I just don't want to see any more Aquaman.
And honestly, I think that's one of I think that's the rumor that James Gunn was addressing as maybe like partially true. Like, maybe we're not going to get another Aquaman film because I don't know if we need it. I mean, I guess we'll see how the second one comes out. But maybe he's going to play a smaller role. Like, just like cameos. Honestly, I thought the cameo of the Justice League was so good in Peacemaker. Mm-hmm. So maybe he'll play a smaller role. And that he's just not going to get a third film. And I do feel like that's the character that James Gunn was referring to when it comes to like things being partially true,
mm-hmm. It's just like when it comes down to as of right now, minus what we hope for in the future, what we've been given with DC, we've been given all these characters in these movies, but like, let's say with the Justice League Snyder Cut, right? That movie was a staple, or should have been a staple, for DC to expound upon, because they introduced the quote-unquote Thanos of that universe, which is Darkseid, And now it's just like, a question mark. Will we ever get a Dark Side versus Justice League going forward? Like, how, with all the news of, I can understand all the news of the movies being scrapped, fine. Then these characters are not getting their own movies. Then, if anything, continue on with an actual Justice League movies like an Avengers or something like that, just to continue on with Darkseid.
Right. And I like the idea of them continue with Darkseid, however that story plays out, just because he is such a like dominant villain
Mm-hmm.
in the DC world. Um, but I feel like I'm okay not getting a Justice League film anytime
Okay.
soon. Because I think that one of the mistakes that they made with the original Justice League is that it was just too rushed.
Sure.
Because like I think they were just so in this
We
like
gotta catch up. We gotta catch
desperate,
up.
yeah, like this desperate state to catch up and try to do what Marvel's doing, like, and obviously that just didn't land. And so I think something that I want is to maybe revisit that and get back to that point. But if you look back at like Marvel, that took
Mm-hmm.
years. Like they try to give us that in like 1 year span. And I think that these things need to have a little bit more care to them, like quality versus
Sure.
quantity. And so like I'm all for like I'd love to see a Justice League film that's good. Obviously we have the Zack Snyder cut.
Mm-hmm.
Um and I'd like to see what's his name? I just missed it. We just talked about him.
Darkseid?
Darkseid. I don't know why I like skip my brain, but and then I'd like to see Darkseid return. You know?
I think after Batman v Superman, because even in that we got we got Aquaman. We got an Aquaman cameo. Even though he wasn't in it, like we got to see in the files of Lex Luthor. We got to see. I actually liked Lex Luthor. Lex Luthor, even though it was, I forgot the actor's name, and he's always playing a weird role. Like he's always been like a prominent character when it comes down to Superman. And the only time we actually get him, we didn't get him in Man of Steel. We get a tiny little cameo in the original um, Justice League, and I think he was in it a little bit more, just like a few more cameos in the Zack Snyder cut. But I think in terms of the conversation, a good superhero movie is really dependent on the villain. If we're not looking to necessarily get back to Darkseid immediately, then maybe we should get a little bit more with the villains that we know of, and Lex Luthor is definitely one of them.
I like that. Honestly, I really do. I think that um that's almost it's kind of like having a stepping stone before we get back. Like I want us to earn it, I think is a good way to kind of phrase it. Um and there was something that like I wanted to touch on that you just mentioned. Or no, it's actually just something that like I remembered. Like I think a film we haven't mentioned just yet when it comes to DC is like Joker. Like that's another film that I think supports what we're saying, that I think DC just needs to go into something more mature because they have so much material to go off of for that.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like I think Joker is falls into those films that obviously was really great. And it's like this is the common theme. It's like the films that DC has produced that aren't just like, oh, it's good, but like literally amazing, is that they all have more adult and mature themes. And like I'm excited because one of the projects that is coming out like very soon is Joker 2, with Lady Gaga playing Harley Quinn.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like this film's just going to be as good as the first one. And so I know I'm excited for the future of DC. I feel safe in the hands that that in the powers that be. And so I feel like this news, I received it in a very positive way.
I think just kind of mentioning Joker, and then the Batman. Joker being an actual origin story, and the Batman is close to, not necessarily, you said it's year two, but it's still like him kind of growing into being the Batman. Those two movies, those two stories are so close in terms of darkness. I think to me, if timelines lined up, I would have liked to see this Joker go against this Batman, you know, but I think it's different timelines, so those these are just two separate entities or whatnot. But if they were to expand on it, I think I would much rather see the expansion of either or of these stories as opposed to the universe where it is right now. Because the DCEU we've already established is something totally different. But the Joker and the Batman, if they continue on with just those stories, then I think those are just a success just based off of what we've seen so far.
Yeah, I definitely see them still investing in those franchises, and I'm all for them having independent, like standalone projects that aren't
Mm-hmm.
intertwined, and they are just what they are, and they have like their own continuations. Because then I feel like what happens is like, and we talked about this when we talked about Batman, is like I really don't want them to taint like the formula because it was so good.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel the same way with like Joker, and I do agree like they have a similar tone where you could kind of see these stories overlap if you look at that, you
Mm-hmm.
know. Although like obviously we know that the Joker
Right, we
is
got
present
another
in that
Joker. I
film
just
and
thought
very
about it just
different.
now. While you were talking, I was like, oh, right, there is a Joker there.
Yeah, so it's probably not gonna happen.
Yeah.
But it's like these are also projects that I think are great that I feel like they will continue to invest in these films as
Mm-hmm.
planned, which is why I feel like those two kind of projects haven't really been mentioned in any rumor of being scrapped because they've been really good and there is a fan base and there is a demand to see the sequels, and obviously we are getting a sequel for both of them, Joker very soon and hopefully the Batman soon to follow. And like we talked about it in the Batman, but I just want to like emphasize it again. Like, I think in the second film, what I'm excited to see is for us to get introduced to Bruce Wayne because we really didn't get to play with Bruce Wayne. Like he was in the film for like 5%. Everything else was the
Mm-hmm.
Batman. That was the
Mm-hmm.
mask. And I think the inverse is true for someone like Selena Kyle. Like we met Selena Kyle, but in the next one we're going to get to meet Catwoman, which is exciting.
Right.
Um, and I think with like the Joker, I feel like that's such a it's those elements that really were birthed once that era of like campy films was over when it comes campy films, projects, comics, and they really dove deep into these elements. And I think because the Joker is such a messed up
Mm-hmm.
character, they have so much to go off of. I think a character I would love to see return is what is the name? Black Mask?
Where
The
it's
one
like a
that comes in
skull, like a
the
black skull.
is it black? Is that what it is? Is it Black
No, no, no.
Skull?
I think it is Black Mask. I'm just asking. You're talking about the character that has like a black skull as a face.
Yes, the one that came out in. I looked at Black Mask, and of course, all I got were black masks.
Hmm.
But yes, the one that comes out in the Birds of Prey film. I think that
Oh, Ewan McGregor's character.
yeah, I think he did great as the role. I would love to see him return in the world of Joker because he's worse than the Joker.
Is he?
Way worse. Oh, it is way worse. Like when he's introduced into the comics, it's literally like I forget I'm sure I can find it because it's the first issue. I'm just gonna look it up really quickly because I don't want to like botch it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking for the cover. Okay, yeah, because it came out in Batman number 386 in 1985. So it says crazier than the Joker, deadlier than Ra's al Ghul, introducing a villain for the 80s Black Mask.
I don't know. I don't know how I feel about that. Just because every iteration outside of the comic, he's always actually kind of been weak, low key.
Dude, this guy. So like I think my biggest interactions with this character have been where he appears in things that cross over with like Harley Quinn, so like Catwoman, the Gotham City Sirens and things like that, where he
Mm-hmm.
does appear, and like just looking at something that is very connected with Selena Kyle. He makes Selena Kyle's sister eat her fiance's
Mm.
eyeballs, which causes her to go like insane. And like she ends up believing that her sister's like a cat demon, and that's like a whole nother thing. But that's just like one example of it.
Mm.
Like his character is very, very dark. And obviously it's like you see different degrees of the character in different projects,
Mm-hmm.
but like if we could see him in like something like Joker, and even the Batman, where they do play with those darker elements, and you see what they did with Riddler, and I think it was amazing. I think either franchise would do really well with that
Mm-hmm.
character. I just feel like that would honestly evoke such a scary and like creepy feel that I really hope they bring him back. Like I think the variant, if you will, that they use in Birds of Prey, I think Ewan McGregor did such a great job. But obviously they killed him off. Like
Um,
one of the elements I disagree with the film, but that's just a character I'd love to see like DC explore.
Again, that falls under the superhero villain conversation, you know. And as of right now, um, the scarier the villain, the I think the better the movie. And the Joker and the Riddler have proven that to me. I don't remember Ewan McGregor. I remember he was in it, but honestly, all I can think about is because I remember Harley Quinn and she broke up with Joker, and then uh, Black Canary, and then Rosie Perez. My I
You're
don't
like a
even know. I don't
that's
even know what was Rosie Perez's character again. She was a cop, right?
yeah. So she played Detective Montoya.
Is she like a superhero or something?
No, so she doesn't have any like superhero powers. Like I think she has her like just really great skills as a detective and like someone on the force, and she kind of plays that middleman when it comes to like the Birds of Prey. That's very much more like a vigilante squad,
Mm-hmm.
if you will. Um, but I was gonna say something else, but it kind of slipped my mind. Yeah, so that's kind of the character that she plays on the team.
I think just you and McGregor aside, I'm trying to think of anybody else besides Dark Knight Joker and even Bane. Those were just, and even Ra's al Ghul from the first Batman Begins. All examples of taking it dark and working. You know, so if anything. I think that should be the theme, no matter what, of this conversation and of DC Studios. And I think James Gunn, if anything, he knows this. He knows that even with something like creating Starro in Suicide Squad, Starro looked weird. It grossed me out, but he kind of went dark with the fact that he's been imprisoned by this one brain guy like this whole time. So he was just wreaking havoc based on that, you know. So I think James Gunn, he has an idea of where he wants to take it. We're going to take probably a little break from any other Wonder Woman villains. We're probably going to get, hopefully, I'm hoping we get a Lex villain in the next Superman if that does come. And Aquaman, the only villain I can think of right now that can continue from the last movie was I think it was Black Mantis or whatnot. And even that story was a little, I don't know, it was a little weird. And I think that is a villain, if anything. Like, I hate to say it because the actor's cool, but I think that should be scrapped for sure.
I think that especially for DC, it rings true that like it has just such great
Mm-hmm.
villains that they have just a plethora of things that they can play off of, you
Right.
know. And so yeah, I don't know what else I got to say when it comes to like the DC recent announcements. All in all, like I'm really excited, and I trust the powers that be, and I'm excited to see what projects we get out of it. I mean, we know like we're gonna get a second season of Peacemaker. We know the Batman sequel is still greenlit, and like they've emphasized that this is still the
Do we know
case.
that? Do we
Huh?
know about the Batman sequel for sure?
Oh yeah, it was announced like very shortly after the release, so that's a confirmed project. And I think with all this uncertainty, they've they've continued to confirm like no, that's still stand, like there's no change in terms of the direction that they're leading into, just making sure that this is a film that continues. And so yeah, like that's confirmed. So I think we have a lot of room to play, and I'm excited as a DC fan that we've been waiting for them to like get it
Mm-hmm.
together. uh, I think we're gonna get a good lineup of films coming up.
But if anything, we're not gonna get anything probably until uh 2024. Like I misspoke in saying that Black Adam was the last of the pre-gun era, but Shazam is. So we're gonna see how Shazam plays out. Um, I would love, if anything, hopefully, Helen Mirren and Lucy Liu, they can villain it up to the point to where it actually makes a good movie, you know. But just from the trailer, and just even after the first one, Shazam is a goofball, you know, and like I'm gonna watch it just because, but I see Shazam as one of those I don't know, goofy characters to where it has a chance of being good, but I don't really have my hopes up.
See, I love the first film, and I didn't even really have a lot of expectations from it. We kind of like we're a mammoth, and we're like, hey, let's run some films, and we got Shazam, and I was actually like really pleased with it. The second one, like I'm excited to see because I hope it continues like from the success of the first
Mm-hmm.
one. But I mean, I think we still have a handful of like pre James Gunn era, like in terms of films. Like I mean, Aquaman,
Scrapped.
The Flash, that
Scrapped.
ever comes
It's all
out.
scrapped. Scrap it all.
It might just
Gun.
get scrapped.
Scrap
They
it
have
all.
not had good luck when it comes to films.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously also Shazam is like slated. So we have a couple films still that like live in like the pre James Gunn era, but I think from there the films that get announced and released are going to fall under the direction of James Gunn.
Yeah, that's that's that. Again, 2 years from now, I'm seeing because we don't have any announcements. Like I think you mentioned, you texted me saying there wasn't anything in San Diego, the San Diego Comic Con. So really, it was quiet. Marvel already made their announcements on Disney Day, and have we already missed fandom? Is there a fandom this year or no? Or did we
I
establish that
think
we
the last
cancel?
time, right, I think the last time that we checked, there wasn't a date for it. Uh, Let me just see if anything has changed in that regard. And 2022. Uh, okay, so this is just the first thing that pops up. So, okay, a couple articles. So, just reading the titles. Why DC Fandom 2022 will be missed by fans. And then another article titled DC Fandom 2022 officially confirmed to not be happening. Um, yeah, so it doesn't even look like we're going to get a fandom. And honestly, that makes sense because if they're scrapping and restructuring the or the DC studios, they don't have very many announcements right
Right.
now. DC Fandom 2023 is going to be lit.
It has to, like, say
Yeah.
this time next year, DC has to, not even DC, James Gunn has to show. He has to give us, like, at least, I would say, honestly, minimum 3 trailers of movies to expect in 2024 under his wing. And with that, that is going to be that is right now I think the most exciting thing Warner Brothers has kind of going for them, you know. Just yeah, you hit it again on the mark in terms of DC fandom is really like of next year is the next big moment for DC.
Oh, yeah. And I kind of want to take a turn right now and talk just briefly about Marvel. But before then, like, do you have any other really opinions like when it comes to the recent announcement or when it comes to like the future of the DC universe?
Yeah, I'm going to continue with that hot take of James Gunn working with Feige. Feige gave him a nice little check. You know what I'm saying? And then it's just like, listen, like, cause here's how the scenario went, right? James, he rolls up, he like, yo, Kevin, my man, DC reached out. You know, they want me to run this. And Kevin was on some, you know what? Here. Because I still got Guardians. I love you for Guardians. We can still keep Guardians going, you know what I'm saying? But here's what I'm gonna need you to do. If you take this job, I'm gonna write you a check for this amount. Don't tell anybody. But I'm gonna need you to just shut DC down for good. Like go over there, cancel everything. Get Aquaman out of here. Is Superman coming? Who knows? Doesn't even matter. And Wonder Woman, y'all, you saw the last Wonder Woman, right? So cancel that. You know what I'm saying? So that's my hot take. I think that if anything, there's a chance that Gunn and Kevin Feige, they're besties, and this was a move on Kevin Feige's part.
Double agent. I love it. And that's a great closeout for DC talk for
Yep.
sure. All right, so kind of shifting into some MCU
Mm-hmm.
news. So the biggest thing that kind of came out recently is Marvel has delayed Phase 5, Phase 6 projects, basically things coming in 2023 and 2024. And this decision or news is in response to the general unhappiness with phase 4, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's been great things from phase 4, but overall, I think the consensus in the fan base is that it wasn't as great as we were hoping
Mm-hmm.
for, you know? And it seems like Marvel's listening.
We message each other on Instagram, and in talking about it and saying that uh, Feige got tired of us asking all the right questions, and even though you and I were asking these questions, we weren't the only ones. There are tons of fans out there that think that Phase Four, though the projects were good for the most part, I'll give Phase Four. If I were to grade it like a 90%, is 90% like a B plus, or is that like an A minus? Like,
That's a low A. That's like almost that's like if you would have missed one more question, you'd be at a like a high B. That's definitely like an A
okay,
minus.
so with Phase Four, I would give it a 90%. So still passing. It's above average, and it's almost excellent. But there were the moments that we've mentioned in terms of giving us loose ends that never really got tied. And I get it. That's what they kind of did in phase 1 through 3, but we kind of had a general idea of where it was going as far as those ends. But like today, everything is a question mark. We have no idea. The only thing that we have that are legit connected are Loki and Ant-Man, and that's just because of Kang the Conqueror, and that's pretty much it. As far as everything else, everybody is going on to do their own thing, and it's worrisome on Marvel's part. So if it just takes, if they need to go back to Marvel camp just to be like, yo, we talked about it like a few months back, let's actually reconvene and discuss the future of Phase 5 and 6, then yeah, because I think with now the news of Guns going to DC, like if Kevin Feige, of course, isn't in on it, then he's like, okay, we may actually have some competition. Let's find a way to actually make this work and make the fans actually love Phase 5 and 6.
Yeah, and kind of the big words that are being like kind of mentioned over and over is like delayed, being re-evaluated, shifting into more of a quality versus quantity approach, because phase 5 and 6 were set up to be like there was going to be at least one project release every month. And in concept, that
What?
sounds really cool, you know, but I mean, especially with what phase 4 gave us, it's worrisome that those projects aren't going to be great. And honestly, like, I would even say that this phase was more like of an 85%, like, still average, great B, you
Mm-hmm.
passed. But it's Marvel, and it's not like the original, like phase 1, like the first phase of the original saga. It was amazing, like top tier.
Mm-hmm.
So to have Marvel be falling short of that is worrisome. And you know, I've kind of made my points when it comes to Marvel and feeling that phase 2 I think is really going to hit. It seems from like the comments we're getting that they were kind of ready to give us more of the same, which is scary to me. And so I think that they thought they were at liberty to just pump out those projects and just hope that we don't catch the shortfalls,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know. But the fans are stubborn. The fans see everything. You know what I mean? Like when it comes to the we're like psychotic in that. Like we'll catch everything that feels like it wasn't up to par. And I think even looking at like the like virtual like effects and that, like just because of the fact that they have so many things coming back to back to back, like the workers are literally unable to produce their normal quality because they don't have the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like things like that's concerning. And so, I mean, I guess it's great that this means they're listening and they're reevaluating things. They're going to delay stuff to make sure that we're actually getting the quality that the fandom truly deserves. But it's also scary because it's kind of a confirmation that we're going to get a little bit more of the same in the next few phases, and that kind of sucks, you know?
I'm looking up what actually came out in phase 4. I want to hold on. All right. So with shows, right? Um, let's start from the top because I want to count it out. We have what was it? Loki, WandaVision, Moon Knight, Werewolf by Night. No, I'll take Werewolf by Night out because it wasn't necessarily a show. Even though this was technically phase 4, but I don't want to put it out there yet. There's Hawkeye, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, She-Hulk, What If, and Miss Marvel. So that makes 8 shows. Now, when it comes down to the movies, we have Black Widow, Shang-Chi, Eternals, No Way Home, Doctor Strange, Multiverse of Madness, Thor: Love and Thunder, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, and that's it. So they came out with 15 projects in Phase 4 in comparison to Phase 1 only being 6, Phase 2 only being 6, and Phase 3 being 4, 6, 8, 10. 10 movies. So this is the biggest phase to date in terms of the projects that they put out. And they did this in almost a 2-year span, okay? I get the idea, like, of us kind of right now as a consumer being in the microwave era of give us, just keep giving us more, but like you said, even in this phase they gave us everything, but even with them giving it to us, we weren't satisfied, so it was a matter of taking us out of this quote unquote microwave era of the MCU, and let's get like maybe like an air fryer or even like a huge oven. Slow it down just a little bit, just so if anything, like you said, it's more so quality over quantity.
and I wouldn't even say that this is an issue with like this is because of the demand of like the fans and like that microwave concept. Like I wouldn't even say that's the problem. Like I think the studio genuinely thought that they were at liberty to just start pumping out products, was just obviously like opportunity for revenue, and money drives the
Mm-hmm.
industry. I think that I think they thought they were at liberty to do so and risk the quality, because they're like, the fans will take whatever they'll take. You know what I mean? Like I feel like this is more so studio driven versus say the fans just wanting a surplus at risk of quality, and now we're just all bitter because we got we want. Like I don't feel like that's the
Yeah.
scenario. I really feel like this is a studio driven executive, like money hungry situation where they thought they could sacrifice quality for the quantity, because obviously that's going to give them a lot of revenue.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're learning, it's like, okay, well, you might actually lose your fan base, and the fan base that's being threatened is actually the ride or die ones that have been through this for over a decade
Mm-hmm.
now, because we've had better, we deserve better.
Definitely.
And so I think that it's exciting to know that they're listening and that they're taking the general feel from the fan base into consideration, because they
Mm-hmm.
should. And they're making some changes. But again, it's kind of scary to think that they were actually ready to do very much the same in the next phase, because I was kind of giving them the benefit of the doubt. I'm like, maybe they know what they're doing. Just because you hope, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like I really really don't want to get to a point where like the Marvel dies out, just because it's been such a prominent part of our lives. um but it's okay. Daddy DC is getting his shit together. Okay, so if mommy goes down and like it goes to jail, it's okay. Because our like we'll be covered, our needs will be taken care of.
Let me ask you this. How would you feel if, like, because as of right now, for I don't know how long, these not DC, Marvel has been so consistent with um not even just giving us the projects, but like giving us these trailers to be excited for, doing events like the Marvel section in D23. How would you feel if anything, Marvel, instead of doing D23 every year, they have their own and it's every other year, just to either A, build anticipation, and B, kind of slow things down? And like with that, it's a two-part question. Do you think that would be better for Marvel Studios?
I don't think it falls into like, oh, do they need to maybe only announce things every other year? I feel like the frequency when they do these like panels and things like that is fine. I just think they need to like narrow down the projects. You know what I mean? Because if we get two major announcements, honestly, we're freaking happy. You know what I mean? Obviously, it's like when Marvel announced all these slated projects, like it's just overwhelming in a great way as a fan. But they don't need to have like all of these lineups and announce it in one, you know, um, event. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like, and I think that actually would kind of create the demand that you're saying, like, or kind of have a better effect, in that if you give us some in Comic-Con, and then we get a little bit more in like D23 and things like that. I feel like that would kind of get that suspense of like, okay, we got this, but I want more. I want to keep feeling like I want more,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not a bad thing. That's like the demand, but I want them to give me quality. Like I rather, and I think I've mentioned this a lot with Spider-Man, just because it's a character that's been rebooted many
Mm-hmm.
times. I never want, and obviously they're still going to continue that character in, with Tom Holland, and then most likely in other ways as it, down the road. I don't want to get to a point where I'm like, I don't want to see Spider-Man on screen anymore. Like I rather wish I could have gotten more, but they gave us a good close of that chapter. Like, and I think that's something they did with like Iron Man. Like that's a character that if he had another film coming up after Endgame, hell yeah, we'd want to watch it. You know what I mean? Like it's a character we would love to see more of. Same with Cap. like it's hard to say goodbye because we love them so much
Mm-hmm.
and we want to see more of them. But that's what gives us weight when we get a send off for the characters in a very beautiful way, which is what we got,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And I don't want to get to the point where I'm like, I'm tired of these characters. God, thank God they're axed from projects, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
I think if by chance, right, if they didn't announce that they were going to slow things down for Phase 5 at least, I think Phase 5 would or is supposed to, I think for me, answer all the questions of Phase 4 and set up Phase 6, which is the 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 multiversal battle. What is it called? Secret Wars, right? So if they're slowing it down, I'm cool with that. I think right now I would just be happy if we answer all of, or if not all, most of the questions that we have. Like we're right now from this trailer, like I mentioned in Guardians, we're now getting Adam Warlock, and that took 5 years to get. I just hope that it doesn't take as long to answer the questions of Phase 4 that came out this year and last year. And for me, I think those questions would be pertaining to Miss Marvel and her powers of time travel, maybe. Um, I'm almost over the robot in the middle of the ocean. Like you don't have to answer that. We you can leave that. If we're talking
I
scrapping,
did.
if we're talking scrapping projects in DC, we can scrap some projects over here. Just scrap that. And then I think the only other questions that are being answered is the team that Val is putting together, and we got that in D23. We finally get to see the Thunderbolts put together. So, um, yeah, slow it down. But if you're gonna slow it down, not only make sense of everything else, but I think make sense in a way to where you're going to prepare us for Phase 6 with everybody versus everybody, universes against other universes. You know.
Yes, and I completely agree, and I think like a film we were excited to see was Multiverse of Madness because that seemed like the most likely opportunity for them to kind of close the gaps and for us to kind of tie up these loose
Mm-hmm.
ends.
All
And
right.
honestly, it's like we're not trying to get the answers right up front. Like I think with Adam Warlock, it's like that's like the balance you were kind of talking about. It's like yes, like I mean, we close off the Infinity, yeah, like Infinity War?
Infinity
Infinity
Saga.
Saga. I'm just gonna say Infinity Saga, but we closed that off with very much like conclusion and like tiny little loose ends like Adam Warlock, you know, and like that's what the MCU has been known for. It's like things don't sometimes come together or they don't click until many, many films and years
Mm-hmm.
later, but the majority of the things make sense. You know, like 90% of things feel resolved and maybe 10% we're like, oh, what's this, what's that? And that's great because we have that anticipation to look for those
Mm-hmm.
answers. But it's like they left, it's more like 10% was understood and then 80 and then 90% was like, I don't really know what this was, or I don't know what you're going with. And then they missed the opportunity to answer some of these things to give us some resolution. So really we're just like, what the heck is going on? And it just seems like very, it seems like a big task for them to answer these things in phase five. Like I hope they do, especially right now that they're slowing things down, maybe giving them time to really like analyze what happened in phase four and figure out how phase five can be a remedy to that. And like something we talked about is like phase five needs to create these connections within the characters, amongst the characters, because there has to be the stakes once we get to phase six, which I think is where like a lot of devastation and
Sure.
loss is going to
Mm-hmm.
happen. But we're not going to care about it if we don't have like a really good foundation for these characters. You know, like when Cap and like when Tony and Steve like went into a civil war and like it ended the way it ended, like it was heartbreaking because we know how much that friendship meant to them, meant to
Mm-hmm.
us. And just the concept that they went 3 years without communicating, like, is heartbreaking. And it's because they did such a good job of outlining this friendship. And I think that's what they need to do in Phase 5. Like, we need to care. And I think Thunderbolts is one of those films I feel like is going to do that. You know, like, I really feel, especially because it's meant to be very Suicide Squaddy. And Suicide Squad, I think, did such a great job in that. And I think that's something that was a shortfall in the original. And we cared. Like, there were so many dynamics that you can look at, like Harley Quinn and, Bloodsport, and Peacemaker, and then all the other ones. Like, that's what we need to
Mm-hmm.
see in this next phase. You know, because just like, again, using Suicide Squad as an example, it mattered when who's like the military guy? I forget, like the leader.
Rick Flag.
Rick Flag, like when Peacemaker like killed Rick Flag, like that was heartbreaking. When Bloodsport killed Peacemaker, when Peacemaker tried to kill like Ratcatcher, when Polka Dot Man got killed, like every single one of those situations meant something to us,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so I think that's what they need to lay out in Phase 5 for us to give a damn. You know?
Right. I think Phase Five, the Phase Five, when it comes down to it, the staple that should have set it up perfectly would have been Multiverse of Madness, and in any type of Kang reference or even TVA reference in that, just to kind of tie some things together in the same phase. I think that would have made sense just so we can be ready for some type of connection. But as of right now, the multiverse and the TVA are it's like they're two separate beings. You know, it's like they're two separate stories that we know they're connected, quote unquote metaphorically, but we haven't seen it on screen. And I think like I was just looking up at the face just now and just kind of thinking how they set it up before to where Avengers first Avengers we get our first glimpse of Thanos, right? And then in so we knew something was coming with Thanos, and then it was the end of the first Guardians to where uh or it may have been the end of Thor: The Dark World to where he said, "Fine, I'll do this myself." Do you remember which movie it was when Thanos went to get the gauntlet?
I think it's Dark World. I think you're right.
It was either that or the first Guardians, either or. So we knew that Thanos was coming over. At that time, I didn't know what the Infinity Stones were, but everybody was kind of going off on the internet. It's like, oh, Thanos, he's getting the Infinity Gauntlet and all this. So I was like, okay, cool. So that's what we're looking forward to. It's just that I know this is the first phase of the new saga, and Kang is the quote unquote villain of this saga. It's just we got a good intro, but I think it was maybe too early. I don't know how I would feel if we got low key at the end of this saga. It may have made a little bit more sense just so it introduces who Kang is at the beginning of Phase 5 with Ant Man. How do you feel about that?
It's funny you say that because I guess like that would maybe at least make us feel like we understand something more than where we started. You know, like I think because I feel like the MCU in this phase started off so strong, and like obviously Loki was one of like the best projects that they came out with in Phase 4. So maybe if they left that at the end, we would have at least left with like a good feeling, like a really strong finish. But I feel like it still wouldn't um, correct kind of the shortfalls in other projects, you know. So but I think it would have left us with like a better feeling, you know what I
Well,
mean?
say like let's say for instance, right? If Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness was what it was, right? And it gave us a quote unquote intro into the multiverse, and then uh, No Way Home comes, and then we get Loki, and we actually see the multiverse kind of splitting. I think that would have been like I think it would have felt different because I think this whole entire phase we were just like multiverse, multiverse, multiverse from the very beginning since Loki, and we only got two instances, which were those two movies, and from that, it's just I know this is the beginning of the multiversal saga, but I think if we kind of just flip flopped it and moved it over to the end, I think that would have brought us into Phase 5 a little bit more confident as it is opposed to right now. Because right now even Kevin Feige, he's restructuring things just because of our dislike with how things are going. So if they were to, I think just all in all, I think it would have made more sense for me if they ended on something like that, just so we know what to look forward in terms of the multiverse in Phase 5 and 6.
See, I feel like that wouldn't remedy kind of the shortfalls of this saga, but it definitely would have left us a little bit more optimistic. So I do agree in that front,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because what we ended up having was a really strong star and a very progressive
Sure.
decline thereafter, and that makes us of course really worrisome, you know. So I think like having had that at the end, also being the fact that this was one of the best projects they came out with in this phase, would have left us with maybe a little bit more like security in the future of
Sure.
the MCU, and a little bit more um what's the word,
Do
optimistic,
you
you know, with how that
do
ended.
you think they expected Loki to be as good as it was?
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure.
Okay. I think I would have held on to that gem. That's just me. I think I would have held on to it to the end. Be like, all right, y'all got. I know y'all thought what y'all thought about Miss Marvel and She Hulk here. We're gonna end the phase with bow multiverse. You know what I'm saying?
And I guess what that would have created also is like, okay, but what the heck? What happened to Loki? What happened to Loki? Like, I feel like that would have been a question we've asked like the entire phase,
Mm-hmm.
and then we get an answer, and it'd be kind of like, and that's kind of what we want. Like, we want to be like, like this is the thing. This is like, you know what I mean? Like, we want to puzzle piece it together because it's almost been like a game
Mm-hmm.
that was played like in the first saga, you know. And I feel like that's we're not given the opportunity to do that because there's a lot of things in the air, and we can speculate, but we have such little to speculate with. I mean, we do have a lot, but a lot of it, like, you know, our theories that we kind of talked about for characters like Miss Marvel, a lot of them are just like too like, I think the fans are having to fill in too many blanks, and Marvel's
Right.
not putting in the effort it
Mm-hmm.
should, you know.
We're asking too many questions, and we're making up our answers as we go.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like it's kind of like our answers are based off our theories. You mean, or, like, you know what I mean? So it's just like it's. I feel like we shouldn't be having to do so much work. I feel like Marvel needs to do their part and give us a little bit more
Definitely.
continuity, even in like the spectrum of having a multiverse. Because even like in Multiverse of Madness, like I was so excited to be overwhelmed with new variants, and we really weren't. Like, apart from like the whole Illuminati scene, which I thought was amazing, and like the slaughter of the Illuminati,
Mm-hmm.
like I wish I felt that more throughout the film. And so I think yeah, I just feel like they need to really do what they kind of mentioned, which is the quality over quantity. And I hope it's not just talk. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And hopefully in future projects, if there's like a movie, I don't know which one, but if there is a movie where there is another quote unquote multiverse of madness, where there's actually a multiverse, I'd like to get more than maybe just like three universes in one movie. You know, maybe give us quite a few and maybe different variants. And by variants, I mean different different actors for these variants as well. You know, because I think with Multiverse of Madness, though the Illuminati was good, right? Um, I think if we got a little bit more, like you said, a few more variants, maybe from other universe, to actually make this a quote unquote multiverse of madness. Because I think as of right now, it was really only one to two universes that were completely mad, and then you have the other Dark Doctor Strange, and like that's so it's like two and a half universes there, you know.
Yeah, and also it's like I feel like it wasn't even gonna be a lot of work on their part because I feel like if you just listen to the fandom and listen to our theories and our fan castings, I feel like this would have been such a great opportunity to be like a fan service and just give us a whole bunch of random shit,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And it's not like they have to have weight and like, okay, now we have to
Sure.
continue with this character. It's like really this was a time for them just to mess around and they really dropped the ball on that opportunity. Like it would have been so cool. It would have been like how Endgame gave us things we didn't fully understand we
Mm-hmm.
needed to see, but we did, and it meant the world. It was so nostalgic, and I feel like they missed the ball with this film to just give us some random crap. Like they did it with I think John Krasinski is the best example because that was a fan casting we've had for
Mm-hmm.
years. But like, I feel like they could have done so much more, like bring Tom Cruise in as Iron Man, and just like just literally look at any like a forum or whatever, or
Yeah.
like conversations with the fan base, and just pluck whatever. Like, I feel like it would have been so cool, even though like I mean I have my own issues with the film that go beyond that, but I feel like it would have at least been like, oh, this is pretty damn great, like, and I don't know.
No, like
um
you're on again on the money. Today you've just been on the money low key. But when it comes down to the multiverse of madness, I think I'm under the impression initially if I didn't watch this movie, I'm thinking like you said it's going to be a bunch of randomness, but we didn't get that. We got one mutant total and kind of like variants of the characters that we already know of, you know? So it wasn't like really anything new. He just went into a new universe with same characters and it just happened to have one mutant in this universe, you know?
And also, it's like they baited us so hard because literally, if you look at the trailers,
Mm-hmm.
the dialogue really, really, really makes you assume that No Way Home and the events of No Way Home were going to be the catalyst of the madness. They literally like had this in the trailers,
Mm-hmm.
and then it had nothing to do with that. There was no mention of it. Like, there's no connection. Like, that's not even like, I mean, I think with like, say if No Way Home didn't give us what they give us, it kind of would have just been on the fans because it's not like Marvel wasn't trying to be like, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's not like they were promising something otherwise. And I've said it before, like, hey, like I'm gonna bet on this, and if they don't give it to me, I'm just gonna be depressed, and it is what it is because it's all on me.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, it's 100% not. It was literally such like they were so baiting, and then they gave us something completely different, and it's not like it was better,
Right.
you know. So it was very deceptive, and that's messed up.
Well, I think it goes to say that being that it may have been a few months ago, maybe D23, to where Kevin Feige announced this as the multiversal saga, maybe in this whole restructuring situation, it's just like, okay, how can we make this multiversal saga a little bit more random to the point to where A, it gives the fans what they want, but B, it doesn't venture off too far, you know? I think Secret Wars is a great idea because in it we're going to get not only variants, but we're going to get characters that we haven't seen yet in the MCU. So, variant or not, we're going to get the X-Men, we're gonna get the Fantastic Four, we're gonna get other villains and things like that, you know, maybe even like a Silver Surfer. But I think if it's going to come down, if it's not all in 616, they have to give us a movie to where randomness occurs, and then in this randomness, this is where we're introduced to these characters that play a role later in the Secret Wars.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, no, completely agree. And also, like, just like using the madness where it's appropriate and having like structure where it's needed,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And I don't know, I don't think they've been utilizing those elements fully. Like, I think an example that I really liked when it came to like madness and fan service was like the final episode of She-Hulk where she's talking to Kevin Feige, just because there's so much mention that things like that we've said as a fan that makes us feel heard, and it's like we're connected. Like, that was cool, you
Mm-hmm.
know? And I think that was great, and I think it fit and it was appropriate. Obviously there was things that we still had like issues with. Like, I feel like we still kind of missed a like a thing
Mm-hmm.
afterwards. You know, it was a little what's it? Not disappointing. It was just anticlimactic, I think is the
Yeah.
word. But yeah, like, I think that this restructure is a good thing. Like, I feel like at this point with both DC and Marvel, they're both in a point of reflection and quality versus quantity. So I'm hopeful. I'm really hopeful. So I guess we will see what we end up with. Um, but I'm gonna continue to be that optimistic, you know, one, and just continue to hope that they get it together, you know?
I think I'm kind of like. Did you have anything else Marvel wise?
No, I think honestly, like, I think we dug really deep with like the news, and I feel like we um flushed that really well. Like, so I'm good on my end.
Okay. Just before we leave, I'm kind of thinking just in terms of back to DC. I think my last statement with DC, even though they're in the hands of James Gunn, which right now worry free. Okay, they're in good hands. But DC as a studio, I think honestly you should also, or they should also reflect on the success of um, the Boys, and the Boys being what it was, and also being as big as it is today. I think that should be clear, like a clear understanding that fans are going to gravitate to the darker, more adult side. And I'm not necessarily saying go X-rated like the boys were, you know, but I'm saying that no matter what, that is how Boys is winning on their own. They took it to another level. They made it their own thing, and they're winning with it, you know. So DC initially, if they were trying to mimic Marvel, I think it's good to say that you don't have to mimic Marvel to be successful, and The Boys has proven that.
Yeah, and I think it's related but not. I just thought it was really funny because, like, I saw this one post of like the boys have us so spoiled that when we're watching She-Hulk, we're like, hey, why are you closing the door? Like, in like the sex
Oh
scene.
right. Mm-hmm.
I just thought that was so funny, you know. But yeah, I think looking at the projects that have been successful within their scope and beyond, like, you know, the boys, I think is um needed, and I hope that's something that they're doing with this whole restructuring and kind of analyzing what they've been doing, how they're going to move forward. So yeah, I definitely think that that's an avenue that they can utilize to just see what would work and what fans like, you know?
Um, do you think, not to go into the quantity section, but do you think, as far as the DC universe is concerned, do you think they would be better in providing more in terms of shows on HBO Max?
I don't know, because it's so early. And in terms of really, it's very early. Um, and so I'm sure that that's something that they can do, and they've proven with like Peacemaker that they can, you
Mm-hmm.
know. So I'm sure that's something that they will utilize down the road. Um, and I think with like James Gunn scrapping projects, I feel like that's a good indication that they're looking for quality.
Yeah, they're just trying to figure it out.
Yeah, let's just try to figure out. This is like he's been on the job like a week, you know.
Okay, well, I think that's everything. You're good.
I am set. I feel like this was so wonderful just because we had so much to talk about when it came to DC and
Mm-hmm.
Marvel. And this was honestly really great.
Yeah, when we discussed like through text what we're gonna talk about, I was like, in my mind, I was like, I actually want to talk about this DC news, and I feel like we can actually have a good conversation. Not like I didn't think it was gonna be short at all. You know, I was gonna have my jokes, and at the end of the day, I think if anything, it played out like it did, like I had hoped. You know, so awesome job, thank you.
No, yeah, I honestly, this was such a fun episode. Um, and I guess we'll kind of stand by and see what news comes out as we continue. But I feel like this is a really good wrap up of like DC, Marvel, and their kind of choices at this
Mm-hmm.
point. And when it comes to Marvel, like we have films coming out very soon, like Ant-Man. And the Wasp, Quantum Mania, along with Guardians of the Galaxy, which are slated, and so I think that'll give us a nice feel for the
Mm-hmm.
direction. So I hope I'm gonna be optimistic and hope that this means we're gonna see some really good projects come out of both DC and Marvel going forward.
What was the big last question when it comes to Phase Four? What was is Black Panther considered the big movie to close out Phase Four? Like I'm not talking like yeah it's the very last movie, but like of course we got like Avengers in the first phase, and then even in Phase Three we get like Endgame. You know, so like was there like a movie in Phase Four to close out like on a good note, or would you say Black Panther was that
I mean, I guess Black Panther was meant to serve that, but if you're asking, was there an Avengers like a
level
stamp
event or something like that?
on this phase? I'd say no.
Yeah,
Multiverse of Madness, I think, was the opportunity to do it,
they
and they
dropped
didn't.
it.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the thing is we had no like no connection in a way that mattered,
Oh
really.
man.
So yeah, that's and maybe that's one of the reasons we really feel like let down, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. All right. That was my last little thought. It randomly popped up right before the close. So yeah, this was another episode of the Comic Cinematic Universe with Chill and Grace. We'll be back next Friday. Next Friday will possibly be another filler episode of Daredevil, but who's to say? You know, Gunn is just going to shut DC down between now and next Friday, and we'll just have more content on my theory being correct. You know what I'm saying?
So next topic, TBD, but we will definitely be back Friday, same time, 3:30 PST. So
PST.
yeah.
All right, so Grace, you have a good weekend, and everybody else who watched and joined us, y'all have a great weekend as well. All right, laters.
Bye guys.